let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome back to Thicc Radio, the podcast where we talk about gaining, feedism, and everything in their orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it. Today we're welcoming to the show for the first time. Today we've got Bladi.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good, thanks.
Good. Well, listen, we're really excited to speak with you today because, of course, we're going to be talking about life in Venezuela, which I think is very, very exciting. So, Bladi, are you ready to get started?
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. So, tell us a little bit about where you're from in Venezuela. What is the day-to-day culture like?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. I think the day-to-day here is like a little controversial side, but it's like a normal day in Latin America. It's the people have some wrong idea of how the country is, but where the situation is a little different because it's like a normal day. The people works, the people do his stuff, the people lives when he can live with different things, but it's like a normal, like another country.
Wonderful. And I'd love to know a little bit more from you. What are those misconceptions that people have about Venezuela? Because I'll admit, growing up in Australia, now living in the UK, Venezuela for me is one of those countries where I'll admit I don't hear a lot about it. I know that it's there. I know it's a part of South America, Latin America, but I don't necessarily know any, I guess, stereotypes about food or culture or the things that happen in Venezuela. So, what are those misconceptions?
Well, that culture is not much, it's not growing like another countries, but it's there. It's too small, but I think that's a culture that we lost over the years. Not many people like that culture. They know they know the gay people, the gay community. They know it, but they have some other opinions about it.
Yeah, I was going to say that living in the United States, the only time that I ever hear anything about Venezuela is when it's on the news and they're talking about the political turmoil. Like, they really don't ever, I mean, but that's America for you. We don't talk about any other country unless we're criticizing it.
Yeah, that's the focus on the talk here because all the people talk about the political side, but no one talks about the social side. So that's two different points of view.
Well, something I actually realized just as we were talking, there is one thing I know about Venezuela, and that is season 3 of Drag Race España. Tim, don't you shake your I like the international drag races, okay? On season 3 of Drag Race España, there is a queen whose name is Maria Edilia, and she's from Venezuela. And I believe she is the first Venezuelan queen, Venezuelan descent queen, who has appeared on any of the Drag Race franchises. So, you know, that's one thing, is Maria Edilia. And I guess I'd ask, have you heard of her before? Is she a known drag queen that you know of in Venezuela, or?
Really, no.
No.
It's the first time I hear it, so
Wow.
I'm sorry for not knowing that.
No, that's okay. Nothing to be sorry for.
I didn't know it either because I didn't watch that season.
That's okay. But if anyone looks up Maria Edilia online, she is this gorgeous plus-size queen from season 3 of Drag Race España. I think she's very funny, very charming, and very talented. So go and check her out, y'all. But it is interesting learning about that misconception about the politics versus the social. So, I mean, I'd ask here, what do you think is distinct about Venezuela separate to the other countries in Latin America?
Well, we have so many natural features we can explore. A lot of travelers, bloggers travel to here to explore that zone. Like well, you know, the falls, the beach, the a really rich culture hidden in some zones. But that's something that the country needs to explore more because right now we are in the phase of reestablishing. That it's going to be slowly, like a step by step.
That makes sense. And it's nice to know that, in a way, these kinds of things are happening not just in the sort of typical Western countries, but they're happening all over. It's countries full of really wonderful and diverse people that have so much to offer in terms of that natural beauty and that landscape, and that's kind of battling that hyper-capitalistic political machine, trying to bulldoze rainforests and turn it all into XYZ when actually it would be nice just to have some beautiful landscape that people celebrated, right? Um, but I'd love to learn a little bit more about Venezuela in terms of, like what is it like in Venezuela when you're fat or when you're becoming fat or body positivity and gaining? What are those things like in Venezuela?
Well, that's a kind of thing like not much people know because it's like the other thing I say that that's a culture that not so many people know and source people know like in Grommr. In Grommr you can find a lot of people who loves that, but here it's a little more complicated. I also have the chance to talk about with some gamers here, and they have the same mentality in the other country. Grow, share, meet another people, and where here the food is like a it's like a treasure in terms of buy it or terms of how you get it because the food here is like a it's like a site is growing a lot faster. You can go anywhere and you see fast food store, supermarket, any kind of that business, and you can find it. But in the fat side, so many people think that it's a wrong because you can be you can live not the life you want, or it's dangerous, or that's kind of things.
No, that makes sense. And I think that does align with how a lot of the world treats it, that, bigger bodies are not the best, and that it really does come down to celebrating thinness.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also interesting to hear about, countries in the world where fast food wasn't really a thing, and how fast food really does come in and changes things a lot, how people cook and how people operate culturally. Like obviously with Australia and America and the UK, fast food's been around for decades now.
Yeah.
So its foothold and effect of obesity on our populations is very clear. Um, but with that introduction of fast food, are a lot of people, really enjoying it, or are people resisting fast food over there?
Well, I mean, it kind of depends what's the mood over the weekend because maybe one day you wanna eat some burger, or the next day you wanna eat a salad. That's depend. Normally here we can eat fast food like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday if you wanna cook. or if you want to hang out with friends or have a reunion, a dinner, something special. But in the routine, it's normal to have the normal foods. Also, some people enjoy that body plus, and they're happy with it, and no problem. Also, they share it on social media like Instagram. So if they are happy with that,
It's good to know.
yeah.
What kind of resources are there in Venezuela for bigger people? Like, is there a lot of good clothing to wear? Is there good, strong furniture? Or, like, if a fat person needs,
Is there steel reinforced chairs? And
you know what I
I
mean.
know, it was just so funny the way that you worded that. Sorry.
But yes, what are the resources like in Venezuela for fat people?
Well, we here have the normal X plus size of clothes. They can it's a normal size of the clothes, but nothing special like another country or another culture.
IKEA hasn't made its way to Venezuela yet, has it?
Yeah, we have a store called Straki. It's like a IKEA for United States.
Oh, okay. I mean, I was bringing it up because IKEA is it's Swedish, right, James? A Swedish line of like furniture and home goods and whatnot. And it's kind of historically known for being made out of cheap pine wood. So I don't recommend, like, big boys, if you're listening. I know IKEA furniture looks lovely because they've got great designers and they always make things look ultra modern, but it's not the sturdiest furniture.
Yeah, I can verify that actually. My partner and I, we're very big on doing the IKEA experience because IKEA is so big and it takes us a good few hours every single time we go there. We're looking through the candles, we're looking at the flowers and the plants, you know. Um, but bless him, he wanted to get a gaming chair from there. And as I said, we need to look at the weight limit, and the weight limit for a lot of IKEA gaming chairs stops at around 180 to 200 pounds. So even some of the most slender among us are already too heavy for IKEA furniture.
Because it's made out of pine wood.
So, yeah, just as a PSA to people, like fats, if you've got good recommendations for clothing providers, for furniture and homeware providers, reach us at thiccradio@gmail.com. We'd love to compile a list just so that we could actually have some resources that might help the wider community. But back to Venezuela, like that's really interesting to know. That even if Venezuela doesn't have specific things like IKEA, that it's got its own version of things. Like that's really interesting and
Yeah,
kind of cool. I think that it's not like all one worldwide homogenized thing, right? Like that things are actually very different all around the world. I think that's really cool. I am curious to ask, like, from your perspective, what do you think about gaining culture in places like the US or the UK or Australia? Like, what are your opinions on the gain of culture in these countries?
well, I think it's like a culture. It seems is very interesting. I like it. I think it's something different. For some people, that culture is weird because see men's naked with the same body, but sharing in the same side in the same style can be weird. But for that people, that is a sort of thing of share or meet new people, make friends, socialize, and do something different. If you feel special with that people, you're happy. If you're not, you can search help in that community. I think so. But I like it. It's a community I enjoy to watch. I meet a lot of people over the years. Right now, I am a little far, but not too much because other things, but it's pretty cool. I hope someday meet some people in other country if I can travel sometime.
I imagine because growing up in Australia, like I grew up on an island continent, so the only way to go to another country and meet different cultures of people was to fly overseas. And it just meant that a lot of gainer communities were kept very, very far apart just by virtue of size. But now living in Europe, there's this really interesting thing that, you know, in less than 4 hours drive, you can traverse the length of a country, which is wild to me, you know, because I mean, there are people back home who probably own farms with land more than Europe, you know. So it's interesting to be a part, to live in a place in the world where everything is close enough to know that someone who is very close by speaks a totally different language and has a totally different culture. So I imagine that while Latin America, it's typically, you know, Spanish, Portuguese, I imagine there's still still that kind of experience, you know. Mentioning like your thoughts on how you see gainer culture out where we are. What is the gaming community like in Venezuela?
Well, like I say, it's a little small because in the past years we have the beer community here was so strong. I searched it and was so strong. The party, reunions, hang out. Over the time, the migration affects the country that so many people left the country. So that's lost. With that, that gaming culture lost it. I have a friend who have share with me sometimes to hang out, eat, grow if we want, and that's cool because we want to meet other people for reestablishment that gaming community because right now.
I mean, I think it's really important to highlight the size of these communities because again, I think growing up in the West and in these like in our Anglo-centric countries, you know, we take for granted, I think, that there are pockets of gainers all over that to get to the nearest one probably isn't very far, and there's not really going to be a major barrier to people. Like if you don't get on, that's going to come down to the basics of like personality and general interest. You know, like, oh, you like different film or movies, like, okay, maybe we're not going to be best friends. Whereas, you know, for communities of this size, I think it's important to remember that, you know, the combined opportunity is so much less, you know, and I really hope for listeners out there to really bear in mind, and I know we say this a lot during these culture apps, but really consider when someone comes from a country where, and especially when English is not the first language, or, you know, it's the culture is very different to your own, please be more considerate and give space to make and build some friendships because people all over are looking to build community, you know, and they might not have as big a local community to be blessed with. So let's give and share, you know, and make things more easy. And, you know, Bladi, I just speak out in faith here that, you know, in times to come, you will find opportunities to visit the US, meet some friends, make some new friends as well, and have community because, you know, every single one of us craves it and we all deserve it, you know. But I do want to ask here, and I always like this question because I like to learn about the food and the drink from different places. So for you, what is your favorite Venezuelan food and drink?
Well, that's I mean the obvious reason I want to say the arepa. And for drinks, we have a lot, but in Christmas we have a special drink we call ponche crema. It's like a milk with some liquor, and it's very sweet. It's delicious. And for desserts, we can go with a three milk cake or more traditional, the pabellón. That's with rice, meat, and here we call plátano.
Oh, plantain.
Yeah.
Ooh, yum. Nice.
I don't think I've ever had a plantain before.
Oh.
Yeah, as it is, it's like a banana but savory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on how you cook it, it can be sweet, but by nature, it is a savory banana.
Hmm.
Um, I'm always a little bit iffish with plantain because I've only ever had bananas, which are sweet to me. So the first time I had a plantain and it was done savory, I was like, this is a foolish banana. This is I don't know what they did to this poor banana. He's lost all his sweetness. He's tasting bland and crazy.
But that drink that you mentioned, that's isn't that what coquito is? Like a milk based and like it's like milk and rum and something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also we have in Christmas the ayaca. It's very, very, very popular.
Ayaka. What's in that? What goes into an ayaka?
It's a traditional plate when you can fill it with all you want: meat, chicken,
Hmm.
vegetables. It's very delicious.
So for you, I want to ask here, do you identify as a gainer yourself, or would you say you're more of an encourager or an admirer? What labels do you use?
Sometime in the past, I identified with a gainer because in my childhood, I was a very fat kid, and over the years, I gained, but not much. So right now, I can identify like a admirer. I will try to be a fitter if I can.
I mean, in Venezuela, are there any famous people who are fat?
Uh, I don't know. I think it's no,
Probably not. Fair
no.
enough. It's the same in Australia, like the only person I would have thought of was Rebel Wilson, and
Ah, obviously.
yeah, she's the only one, the only famous one I know of. And not that she is anymore, anyways. So I want to ask, like, is there a phrase that you speak in Spanish that you would say to compliment a gainer? Like, if you wanted to flirt with a gainer and tell him that you think he's cute and fat, what would you say to him?
So I think it's the typical fate that everyone say like bigger is better. But here we have a phase we say like you are too fat to be transparent.
Okay.
It's not a compliment, but it's something we say with we saw fat people that took over the view of something.
Okay. So how do you say that in Spanish? You are too fat to be transparent.
Eres muy gordo para ser transparente.
Well, there you'll go. That's a phrase there. Put that in the arsenal. You're too fat to be transparent. You ain't gonna be through.
Even Superman couldn't see through this shit.
Thick cut meat, baby. Thick cut. That's barbecue brisket back ribs. Bubble bath.
Bubble bath.
Bubble bath. Um, so now I know you mentioned that the Venezuelan community is very small. But I imagine that y'all would be quite close with one another, right? Like y'all would be very friendly with one another.
Uh, yeah, yeah. The gainer where I told it's very kind, it's very funny. He has his own partner, but it's very kind. He is so funny. We talk sometimes we have time. We where his work or when he's out. Always we can talk.
Hmm. So, what changes would you like to see in your local gaming community?
Well, obviously that I would love to grow again. Like we get that name again, and obviously that will take so much time to do. But I think if we make the right decisions and the nice steps, we can rebuild that community again.
I mean, I want to throw this to you for a second, Tim, because I know that you've contemplated doing events yourself at some stage of the future and
Hmm.
whatnot. I want to ask you, like, what changes do you want to see in your local gaming community?
I want to see people actually willing to show up. That seems to be the number one thing is just getting some members of the community to commit to just, showing up and having a social interaction. And I realize that people are very busy. Everyone's got careers, everyone's got homes that they have to look after, everyone's got relationships. But, if I can set something aside far enough in advance, like I could even do it as like, say in 6 months, I would throw one and like give people 6 months to like, just give take the time off of work if you have to, request it now or whatever, if it's going to be like a little, and if it's just a couple of hours in a pub or a restaurant, just take a chance. That's really all I want to see people do is take the chance. Like I'll provide I'll host in terms of like I'll be the one to sort of organize things, but you guys have to show up.
Yeah. I mean, if I were to request one change in my local gamer community, and I think I touched on this before, I would want people to be more open to making new connections. Because I do think we have a tendency to shut ourselves down. We have a tendency to say, I have enough friends. I don't talk to people from other places because I can't be bothered with that. I understand we all lead busy lives, as you said, Tim, and if you really aren't in the mood to be around people, then fair enough. But just as a challenge to the listeners, I would certainly say if you've got capacity to talk to people from afar, and especially if someone reaches out to you, it could be someone like Bladi, who comes from a place with a smaller community and just wants to make friends. So that would be my request, getting people to be more open to meeting new people and having some new experiences. But I also want to ask you here, Bladi, as we begin to round things out for the episode, what is a question that you want to be asked about your life, about gaming, about life in Venezuela? What do you want us to ask you about?
Well, I would love to the people know that it's not like the fake view they have of be or live here, because here it's a lot of this stuff here, but I think this is like a moment to let people know here the things are different. Obviously, can be some bad things, but not all the time. But I want to let people know that here it's not like their magic.
I love that. And I love learning that there are more beautiful and wonderful places for us to travel, to be, to see in this world, and that there are gainers like yourself who are there and ready to meet with people. But I think that brings us to the end of our episode today. Bladi, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you being here.
No, don't worry. Sorry if my English is not too good, so I try my best. Obviously, thanks for the invitation, and obviously, I am fan of both of you, so you're welcome anytime.
Oh, thank you. And you don't need
Thank you so much.
You don't need to apologize, baby, because at the end of the day, we asked you, you said yes. And I think as all of our listeners here can appreciate, English is not always the most intuitive of languages. It's not always easy. And you've been wonderful giving us your time and experiences in a different language to share that with the world. So thank you for being so open and so willing, and you're listening. Give this boy some love, and we'll get to the socials in a moment. So, Bladi, where can our listeners find you online?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram, like wlaxisstudio, and that's it.
That's it. Well,
yeah, that's it.
That's beautiful. And we'll put the socials in our show notes as well so that people can find it there. But that brings us to the end of another episode here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a good review. If you liked this episode, the podcast, or just us in general, share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram and BeefyFrat at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and Beefy Frat at Thicky Mouse. You can also look us up on Instagram and TikTok at Thicc Radio or at our website at www.podpage.com/Thicc Radio. If you want to submit a voice note, you can find the link in the show notes. And if you have any questions or ideas for episodes, you can reach us at thiccradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Enter app podcast produced by Stan and Thicky Mouse.
Mixed and mastered by Stannnum.
Our artwork is provided by Bladi.
Our theme song is provided by Bladi.